And it's going to be open for, and what we've done, we've turned the agenda from, so that item 4 will now be item 3. That's Katie. And we need to actually follow with what will be now item 4. Yeah? So,
it says here to the advance tenant email. We didn't know that.
the what?
In advance of the meeting.
You've still welcome to raise anything you want, but if you send it in advance, I can get a
It's
response.
still coming.
Sorry?
You can still do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, you have
You just adjust our something to you.
I'm not on email anyway.
No.
well, you have the opportunity to raise it now because it's open for if you have any agenda.
I sent a point in advance to Chris. I didn't use that email address. I did email him about the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Bennington Lane.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I'm responsible for that.
My name is Susan Crawford, and I live in Pollard's Hill before.
Oh, really?
I often go down Bennington Lane, and I don't know why the council has made it 20 miles an hour, but it's very dangerous now to use that limit. When I drive down there, I get people tailgating me, they hoot at me, they overtake recklessly. When I go on the bus, I go to stick to 20 miles an hour.
Yes, sure. Thank you. So, in 2018, we had a manifesto that we put to the good people of Merton, and in that manifesto was that we would move to 20 miles per hour. So, following that endorsement by the electorate of this borough, we are rolling out 20 miles per hour. We begin with the east of the borough, 20 miles per hour, and we'll stretch out to the west of the borough. The issue of whether you're tailgated or whether they're going too fast is a matter for the police. But we will not be reversing the 20 mile per hour speed limit introduction. Thank you.
Can I ask because it's not a residential area, it's only common. And we've got a wide pavement of pedestrians. And it doesn't go past a school or any buildings, any homes. And as soon as you cross the tram line and into Sutton where there are houses, it's 30.
Yeah, I mean that is your view, and that is, and I respect your view, and I respect the fact that you've been tailgated, and that's wrong, and that shouldn't happen. The vast majority of people in those local elections endorsed their manifesto, and that we are rolling that forward, and it was budgeted for.
I think it'd be helpful if you explained why. Could you explain why the move to 20 mile an hour? I think that would be helpful for people.
So yes,
yeah, there might be other people that
It's not
don't.
residential.
No, it's not because it's residential.
So we are not outliers. This is not the only borough in London that has 20 miles per hour. So the vast majority of local authorities throughout the UK are rolling out 20 miles per hour. So it's an issue of safety. So where is 30 miles an hour? If they're speeding at 40 miles an hour, an accident there would be quite bad. Maybe we fade to where it's 20 miles an hour and they're speeding at 30. It's not as bad as 40. But the enforcement of 20 miles per hour, or 30, or 40, or 50 is a matter for the police. It's a safety issue.
Calculated discovered pollution, they're calling by having a 20 mile an hour limit.
Yes, we have heard of those arguments. We have a air quality strategy that we follow that is endorsed by that follows up on the Mayor of London's air quality strategy. So all those strategies are aimed at improving air quality and reducing pollution. We have a raft of other policies that will tackle air pollution. Air pollution and air quality is a national issue and a London-wide issue.
2 points, Stephen. The air quality pollution does actually increase at 20 miles an hour because the vehicles are travelling slower, and it's proven that air quality is bad at 20, end of that. The lady says about the buses, we've recorded buses in excess of 30 miles an hour in Rome Road, and TfL says that their buses don't speed. So your 20 mile an hour for London Borough of Merton is being ignored, even by TfL.
I can take that issue up with TfL. We have an officer.
So we've got it documented because we work with the police on a regular basis.
Well, let me take it up as well.
Yeah.
If you'll allow me, I'll take it up as well for you.
Please.
So we have an officer who's a liaison officer between the borough and TfL, and if you send me anything that you've sent as well, we can combine the two, because I do believe that public services like bus drivers should adhere to speed limits.
Where do you drive more than 20 miles an hour in Merton?
What's that?
Where can you drive? 20
Where?
miles an hour?
We're in the traffic
Hey, oh yes, yes, very good.
So yeah, I'm a town council, so local resident, a member of Mitcham Cricket Club and Mitcham Society. I'm getting quite concerned with the way that the council has penalised the motorists really, not intentionally probably, but they narrowed roads, particularly Cricket Green, and the traffic light formation at Fair Green now has made traffic come to a standstill. In many instances, the traffic piles up from Cricket Green, while the traffic light is right up over the bridge past Wilson Hospital. All because they've narrowed the road not down the bottom there.
Okay, well, I can take up.
I can understand why it's done, but it's had a knock-on effect which has made it worse for pedestrians. The pollution down there now, like being involved with Mitcham Society doing air quality control, and the pollution down there now is horrendous.
Yes,
And there's 2 schools down there, 3 schools.
we can look at the formation of the traffic lights, which so I'll take it up whether as a result of the narrowing they actually should tweak the traffic lights in response to, but I can take that up with them.
But the problem is what's happening is people are jumping the lights, and there's been 2 accidents down there.
Oh, that's shocking.
Yeah, bad accidents.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons down there is
Well,
the filter by the book, you can't get into it now because the road's so narrow that the cars are tip on it, jumping the pavement, which is making it worse. And they've got a silly little stuff there now, but it's really common, but it's already going.
well, we've got a very good highways officer, Liam Cooper and Steve Cooper. Both of them are very good officers. Liam sends us the roadworks schedule. And Steve Cooper is a very experienced traffic highways officer. I can talk to him and come on a site visit and have a look at it.
Do they ever go out and stuff? Because anybody, one of the manager of those sort of traffic control saw what was happening in Mitcham these days, especially Bishop's and Bruce's make it even worse.
Yeah, no, we know about it.
I've been trying to get hold of Steve.
Well,
He's
that's
off the
nice.
site.
He's often on site. If you have a site that you want me to come with an officer, we can do that.
My name's Alambritis. I'm a local resident, also a member of Keep Our St Helier and Keep Our Epsom Hospital campaign group. I wanted to ask you, Stephen, Prime Minister announced recently that he was going to give £500 million to Epsom and St Helier to build a new hospital. As John Ashworth said in the House a few days later, this is not money for a new hospital, it's money to downgrade Epsom and St Helier. Totally agree with him. They are now, because they've got this money, they are now going to go to consultation. They're claiming they have engagement. It's claimed that scrutiny committees have looked at the plans. In fact, they've still not published any detail at all in their plans. So A, how has anybody scrutinised it? B, how have they had an engagement on it to get to this point? I would ask Merton Council to consider a judicial review, because I think there's lots of stuff about how they've acted that's actually illegal. So I'd ask you to consider that taken into a judicial review. I'd also ask you to employ consultants to write a report on it, as you did back in 2005, and have someone who knows about healthcare provision, who can go through what little we know, and then the plan when it's eventually published, and look at the case and consider referring it back to NHS England and kick this plan into the long grass, because I think they're trampling all over us in health provision and legally.
Entirely agree with you, Sandra. Thank you for what you and what Kosh do in support of St as you know, the local authorities are one with you in defending St Helens Hospital and keeping all its acute services, including the consultant-led maternity. So yes, we are not fazed or fooled or hoodwinked by the announcements made in the confines of a Conservative Party conference. You are quite right that if anything's going to happen, it'll be possibly a downgrading of certainly A&E, and if not with that maternity at St Helens. So we as a council are sitting back. We regularly write and we regularly take umbrage with Sarah Blow from the NHS and with Andrew Murray, the chair of the Clinical Commissioning Group. And we agree with you that we need to keep our wits about us. As you know, Siobhan McDonald, the MP for Mitcham Morden, put a very good question to the Secretary of State that reminded the Secretary of State that a Chief Executive called David Elkins was responsible for attempting to downgrade North West Health Service. And now he's at St Helier Trust, and she asked the Secretary of State if he saw a pattern there.
And she's absolutely right.
Yeah, so we are at one with you. On the question of judicial review, we have two things on judicial review. We monitor everything. The engagement is not the same as a consultation. The process is flawed. We will take a view on the question of a judicial review. And if we have to, we will. We will take a view of that as we move, as we see whether they will have the board to downgrade St Helier and announce a new hospital in Belmont where it's not needed, and then put pressure on St George's Hospital as well.
And those surrounding ones.
Yes, yes. So we are with you, and we need to be working closer together. I know that, but councils have a way of working that is very meticulous, and we will continue to do that. We want to be exactly like Lewisham, that was 110% in support of its local hospital, and you have the audacity of an MP whose constituency St Helier Hospital is, and he's not supporting his local hospital.
He's telling everyone he is.
You could not make it up.
No.
You could not make it up. So yes, we will continue to fight for St Helier, and we are pushing for those impact analyses on the most deprived within that area. We're not getting that. We're asking for that. Still.
Well, Stephen, we go to the scrutiny committee meetings where Merton's represented and Sutton and all the other involved boroughs, because this goes out to Wandsworth, Croydon, Kingston, all those boroughs. And we go to those scrutiny committees, and they happen about once a month, and the subcommittees happen. We're not allowed to talk at them or ask questions, but we see the scrutineers meeting with the trust board, meeting with so-called improving healthcare together. And they are asking questions, and Peter McKay probably asked the most probing, but they can't ask any really detailed questions, because although they've been having these scrutiny committees and they're a legal requirement and they've been doing it for up to 5 years now, they can't answer any really pressing questions because they still haven't seen the plans. And I think this is outrageous that neither the scrutiny committees and the councils are supposed to be involved and part of these decision makings. How can they be involved when they haven't even seen the plan and the public haven't seen the plan? It must be illegal what they're doing.
So we are, as I said, tracking everything, keeping a record of everything, and taking a view on a judicial review.
But there's a very tight time limit when you're allowed to go for a judicial review. It's something like 30 days. I mean, it's a very small window. So if you're going to do it, you need to have the ammunition in hand. And I would suggest hiring a company, a healthcare audit company, to look at the issues and detail what's gone wrong and what's needed and whether it's a good idea medically or financially. I think it would be something that the council ought to do now, so you've got all your ducks in the row so you can jump on it.
You won't find us wanting. You will not find us wanting.
Stephen, getting back to traffic in Mitcham, if you're coming from the pond into Mitcham, under the old system, you literally had 3 lanes, and one went round and went to Sutton. You're now down to 2 lanes, and the old lane that would go to Sutton is now people going down Western Road. So you've got this back up. The buses that come off of the new road across, they come across on a worst day 4 or 5 strong. And the set of traffic lights outside the opticians or whatever, you know, on the one-way system goes to red because people won't go across. So now the buses have now blocked up the whole of Mitcham, and that is where the troubles start, and it really, really backs up. I've witnessed in the last couple of months 3 or 4 people, elderly people, black, white, pink, whatever you want, crossing the road where they shouldn't be because there's no right of way there. And because there's so many buses that are actually walking between double-decker, the back and the front of the double-decker bus and walking out, it's extremely dangerous. When it was being built, we had at one of these meetings the guy that was in charge of it all, and he said that it's TfL that programme the lights to go round. The backing down Western Road to the Solar Centre goes almost down there at a stop some mornings and evenings. Something's got to be that whenever you switch jacking on, you will always hear that there is a problem, and it backs up to like here, it backs up down to Collier's Wood, Tooting, Broadway and far. It needs to be solid and settled.
I'll find out who that key person is, and it may be a time for a review of the whole lighting situation. I'll find out who that was and get them over.
Any other issues?
Rubbish.
Pardon? Rubbish.
The rubbish in London Borough of Merton is, and you've been the leader of the council, the political side, so you're the man that's one of the men that's responsible for it. It's horrendous, and it's got worse and worse and worse since you've gone to the Ola. And you missed a trick with not having the third wing bin to put all the plastics and the cans in, because they're all over the road everywhere. We met with Siobhan and your guy, London Borough of Merton's guy, from the officers, and we met with the other, David was there, and they just brushed it to one side.
No, this is we're not brushing anything to one side. We are taking this very seriously. There are, if you'll allow me to finish, there are some successes. Those successes are savings that go towards adult social care and other services, where it involves vulnerable people, and the other one is recycling has gone up to 45%, and we are in the top 10 to 5 local authorities with recycling shooting up to 45%. Landfill is, what we send to landfill is negligible, so all that is to be welcome, and the wheelie bin system is settling down. However, I agree with you, sir, that is by no means perfect. It is actually in some areas not good at all. We are wanting to make sure it meets the aspirations of all of residents. At this moment in time, it's not, and we will keep pressing on Veolia to get a better service. We have a flight ticketing strategy that involves enforcement and tracking and seeing if there is evidence to fine and penalise and take people who flight into court. What we introduced initially was a standard service. Now we're addressing those bespoke areas, flats above shops, communal areas. So, and that's where we've seen that problem. And thank you for suggesting or posing the idea of a third wheelie bin for your cartons and your. We're nowhere near that area. We need to investigate and consult with residents. But I agree with you, sir, it's not good enough.
But the savings that you're making to spend elsewhere, you're now being charged by Viola for all this extra work.
Yeah, we,
On one Saturday alone, the fly tipping guy in Long Thornton had 146 jobs, and all he could do was 80 odd, because the lorry was packed to the gums. As he left Alambritis, I walked down past him, and on the way back, they were coming out the shops and chucking crap on the floor.
we need to have an education, we need to enforce them, we need to bear down on the Veolia, and we will get this right.
But it isn't just Viola.
No,
It's you need people out there enforcing it,
yeah.
getting hold of these buggers.
Yeah, we employ more enforcement officers, we go to court, we fine, it's a long, tortuous process, but we have a fly tipping strategy that will address that, and we will get to a situation where it is much, much better service.
But what concerns me is it's going to take years, not days and months. It will take years. Brenda's had, where Brenda lives, the fly tipping by the guy that walks around and chucks it on the floor. She had it, and then he goes up the top and dumps it elsewhere.
So fly tipping throughout the country, this is not, again, you know, I address meetings and I take questions about fly tipping. Fly tipping, and I need to answer them, is a national disgrace. 40% increase in fly tipping throughout the UK. Throughout the UK. It is not an issue that is unique to the London Borough Motor, but I do not want to see it, and we want to clamp down on it. So we've got a strategy, and we've got more officers working on it, and you should see a very quick and speedy improvement.
When you say a quick and speedy, how long, roughly?
Well, it's a few months. I would want to see that panning out as a much faster improvement of the service.
So we'll talk again at the next.
Probably, yeah.
Well, we need a cultural change, an educational change, we need the government support as well, and we need everyone pushing together.
When I started school in Singleton in the early 50s, every month we had a Keep Britain Tidy group member come in, and the policeman would give you a whack round the head if he saw you dropping anything on the floor.
I know.
We
Let's go back to that. Yeah.
Can I just add 2 comments to that? If we had lids on our plastic bins, boxes, to stop stuff blowing around, I think that would be very helpful, and that could be done pretty quickly. And I don't understand. You need to get more boxes, but I understand what you're saying. We need lids on the boxes. And number 2, in regards to the litter that blows around, whether it's from ripped sacks, whether it's coming out of open boxes, whether it's the stuff that gets dropped by Veolia staff when they do pick up our rubbish, because they drop it and they don't pick it up. Not only is it unpleasant for all of us and encouraging rats, but it's also harmful to the wildlife and the River Wandle and the River Thames and the sea. So all of that, I think, needs to be taken into consideration as well.
We need to get this sorted.
Thank you.
Right. So, can't we follow the example of Croydon, who name and shame the people that get done? They get named in the paper and a picture. Can we not do that?
We have been doing that, but not as frequently as they've been doing it.
Not in my
Yeah, we sequestered a van that fly tipped, and we gave all the details. That was a quick win for us. I myself gave evidence a witness statement on a fly tip that went to the court. Sadly, the judge decided that the culprit wasn't in a position to withstand a court hearing, and gave him a caution. So, you know, and that was 6 months waiting. So, but we will.
Croydon reported in the local paper.
Yeah, and
Local paper. If you want to know what's going on in Richmond, it's fine.
Yeah.
You don't see any local stuff.
We have done enforcement in the current edition of My Merton. There are details of enforcement, but I will take it up with the local. It's the Wimbledon Times there.
Stephen, for clarity, for the question I asked you before, do I take it that the council is looking into going to do judicial review?
Surprise is very important in those
Well,
issues.
I hear that.
We as a local authority look at all options. I can't go public that we will, otherwise, you know, this is on television, this is being televised. No, I don't know, but we as a local authority will consider all options.
Okay, and are you considering employing a professional, an independent professional, to look at the whole situation and give a report that you can forward back to the NHS England?
We did, I recall when we did do that,
Yes.
at the
About
last
14 years
time.
ago.
No, it was about 6 years ago, I think, if I recall rightly. 6 years ago, that's right. We will consider all options. We'll have a look at that as well.
I
So
consider
we're tracking everything. We're tracking everything.
Okay.
We're tracking everything.
Okay, now one of the biggest problems we have as a campaign group is public awareness. The public have no idea what's going on, and we have asked you a few times, Stephen, they're going to announce a public consultation any time now, this month, within the month probably. You have said a few times that you would put signs on the dust carts
Yes.
to raise public awareness. I think now's the time. I think it's now or never, Stephen.
Yes.
Are you going to do it soon?
So we've done banners on in front of the civic centre. I have said to you that we will consider looking at dust carts because I saw that in Lewisham. So we will
Yes.
look at that.
But you actually asked the Viola chap when we were at a meeting about 18 months
Yeah.
ago if it was possible, and he said yes, and you said that yes, you would.
Yeah, well, timing is important, so we'll time it well.
Well, people need to know about it
Yes, yes,
before they go
yes,
to public
yes.
consultation, Stephen, and that could be any day soon.
Yeah, no, we're on top of it.
Too
We
late,
are on
isn't
top of it.
it?
So in reply to the young lady's comment about the couples on the bench, I thought the council did...
Yeah, there are. You can get the leads with those.
Yeah, so you
Where do you get them from?
From Garth Road.
And will they fit the old bins from donkey years ago? So are they readily available?
Yes, they are.
They've
Yes.
been available for a long time.
Yeah, if you get a new one, you get it with a lid.
No, don't.
No?
No, I've had, in my street, in Kingsmead Avenue,
Finish.
I've had a dozen delivered, and
Now
it's
it's
not for me, but
Yeah, yeah, no.
it's councils and multiple
Okay,
occupancy.
thank you. John?
Good evening. My name is Joan Henry. I'm one of the councillors in Palazzo. And we're just talking about partaking and, littering. And as some of us may know, that we start like street champions in our ward. Like, we found someone maybe in the street who would be happy to support each other. Because what we notice sometimes, like people put their rubbish out at the wrong time. So if you're a neighbour next door, you know if your friend next door, your neighbour next door put the rubbish out at the wrong time, we have, we remind people of the time not to put up. Because to be honest with you, this is some of the issue that causes the fly tipping. Because people put their litter out at the wrong time, and then of course the foxes and the rats and the cats and everybody gets scattered out on the street. So it's not really that we're not taking responsibility to get our street clean, but sometimes it's how we do it, and not because we're not educated, because some people are rushing out to work so they have to put stuff in overnight. And of course, if you put your rubbish out overnight, and there's nobody there to monitor it anymore, something then you've got, yeah? So these are the things we want to look at. And on my street where I live, we have champions. So, we support each other and we ensure that, we have a clean street. So if all of us try and work together in that sense, that will really help. And personally, I would like to see all of Merton clean. However, Palazzo is really doing a big, difference.
Thank you. We will move one or two more questions and then we'll move on.
I'd just like to comment, do you have any figures on whether the fly tipping has increased since you've made a charge to pick up items about it? Definitely it has. Used to be 5 things per quarter, and now it's £30 for a few things. Is it £50 for five? And I think that's a task.
Not 30. Yes. So we were very, it was with a heavy heart that we, as a result of the financial constraints facing all local authorities, including this one, if your income to your household was reduced by 60%, then you would have to take some very, very difficult decisions. And one of those difficult decisions was to charge a modest fee for bulky waste collection. And so that was with a heavy heart because the financial constraints were such. And so a lot of local authorities do charge for bulky waste collection, but it's a modest charge. No, I haven't got, I'll ask officers if there are any figures, but I doubt it because...
I'd like to pay £50 to put 5 bins out, because often they get taken by other people, and I pay for £50.
Oh, right,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It was a difficult decision taken with a heavy heart.
Okay, we got 4 questions and then we must move on.
I'll talk about the money in my speech.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Stephen, a question for you. As you know, I'm from the Keep Us on Heavy Hospital campaign.
You weren't here earlier with people.
Yeah, no, I have a question though, if I
Yeah.
may. I'd very much like to meet with you if that's possible, because we have a lot of information on this that I think you need to know
Yeah.
as the council leader and for councillors. So could we arrange a meeting
Yeah, sure.
between us and
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I have no issue. I just want to inform you that we have a member of parliament called Siobhan McDonagh
Yeah.
who has everything you have and probably a lot more.
No.
However,
She doesn't.
let me finish. She has access to the House of Commons library, and she can call for any paper she likes, and she has parliamentary privilege. However, if there's anything you think she's lacking, and I'm lacking because I work closely with her, let's meet.
That's exactly what I mean. Yeah. We go to the clinical commissioning group meetings, we go to the NHS Trust Board meetings. No one from the council is there. And we've got a
You
lot
have
of
stuff.
we record all of this.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got a lot of
Now,
information.
you weren't here earlier, I did pay a tribute to Kosh,
Oh,
and then we need to work closely together, and let's have that meeting.
let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you do like Croydon, that you can pick up big items? Because it must be cheaper for you to go around and pick them up for nothing than pick them up off the road.
So we used to have a bulky waste collection system, and with a heavy heart.
You use the skips out.
Yeah. We used to have community skips that builders used to fill. There has been over the years, suggestions to bring back community skips, where we have a skip at the end of the road and people can put in their redundant stuff. But the evidence when we had it was they were filled within a day by builders.
Well, just a day, minutes.
What was the reason for not?
Because the builders filled it within
Oh,
a
the
day.
builders did.
Builders, yeah.
One other question.
As a builder.
Last
Yeah,
year.
one or two. Go on.
Stephen, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a Labour council in North West London, I believe it's Hammersmith and Fulham, who have got a lawyer to look at what is going on in an area that is never ever discussed in public, and this is where the tap is being turned off for NHS treatment. This is the clinical commissioning groups who we attend. Now, there is a procedure laid down by NHS England for these to merge. This is being done so that the whole of South West London can be given to a small group of people to decide how every penny of health and social care money will be spent. And that task will then be handed over to a private company who will allocate contracts to private companies. That's where we're at. Now that NHS England procedure has not been followed in North West London. The council is supposed to be a participant in planning that. For example, you've expressed concern about different degrees of health needs in different parts of the borough, and there's similar issues all across South West London, and there isn't actually any way that a small group who are set up in order to privatise all health and social care are going to have a detailed knowledge and understanding of the needs of people, for example, in the west parts of Mitcham and other parts of South West London. Now, they have got this very detailed set of objections to the failure of NHS England in South West London to follow NHS England's central rules for setting up merged CCGs. The same is going on in South West London now, and they are proposing to set it up without consulting the councils at all. You need to take action on that. And if you want to see what has been done in this legal letter, we can furnish a copy.
Yeah, let's have that meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we're going to need to move on. But I did anticipate that this agenda will come up, because it's probably the most topical agenda for some time now. Siobhan McDonald, the MP, actually did have, as you pointed out, she had a meeting on Road, and there were quite a few people out. Lots of issues were raised. It was actually put back to Veolia. I actually asked them a couple of days ago if they could just give me a brief note on where things have gone since we've had that meeting. I'm not going to read it all out. It's going to go into the minutes, and you welcome. I hope you go and look at the minutes, because they're suggesting that they're doing certain things. There's still much work to be done, and in some areas there's already improvements being shown. My experience, however, is that I think I have to thank Veolia for the work they do, because I drive around the water almost every day, and I see lots of fly tips and so on. I drive around about the next day, and they're all cleared up. Right? So it's not that they're not doing some work, they're actually clearing, but they can't clear fast enough.
Yeah.
And I think they did point out in this report that they still have to do a lot of work in terms of apprehending people who are doing fly tips, and they're working on it. Thank you so much for that. I think if you could now move on to the next agenda item, which is the climate emergency, and I'm going to invite Katie to talk about
We changed 3 weeks to 2 weeks, one. I'm not going to keep up.
So hi everyone, my name is Katie Holter. I'm one of the climate change officers at Merton Council. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the declaration of climate emergency that was announced in July, a little bit about why that was agreed and what the evidence is telling us we might need to do about it, and also how you can get involved if you wish. So if you look at the evidence that we've got available at the moment and think about the greenhouse gas emissions associated with gas and electricity and petrol and diesel vehicles, you see that Merton emits around 500,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions a year. Most of that is due to gas use, so if you have a boiler at home that you heat your home with, that contributes. About a quarter is due to electricity consumption, so when you use electricity at home or the businesses, and about a quarter is petrol and diesel used in vehicles, mostly cars. So those are kind of the more direct greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted in Merton. If you think about the indirect emissions, so that's things like if Merton residents take flights outside the country, or if you buy food which has greenhouse gas emissions, or it's got lots of packaging around it, for example, or if it's come from a long way away, then you can increase that estimate to about 1 million tonnes a year, or maybe more. That is why in July the Council unanimously declared a climate emergency. So that was a decision taken by all councillors, and the climate emergency was a statement which committed to 3 things. So the first thing it committed to was to set target dates that we're going to work towards to become a carbon neutral borough. So the aim is to become a carbon neutral borough in 2050. The council also committed to becoming a carbon neutral council by 2030. So those are the two target dates that were set. The second thing it committed to was forming an action plan which was consistent with meeting those targets, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And the third thing it committed to do was set up a working group that working group is chaired by Councillor Byers, who led the climate emergency, and that met a couple of weeks ago. It's made up of a mixture of residents and businesses who collectively can have quite a good reach, and they have a good level of knowledge about different aspects of climate change. So if you think about what the evidence is telling us at the moment about what we should be doing about it, I mentioned earlier that a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions are associated with energy consumption in buildings. So if you think about the fact that Merton has around 80 to 90,000 properties, and in addition to that, lots of businesses, we're really talking about trying to decarbonise buildings at the rate of about 3,000 a year, every year to 2050. So that's making them more energy efficient, replacing gas with electricity, and using renewable, so things like solar panels on your roofs. There's a similar sort of story with cars. So there's about 72,000 petrol and diesel vehicles that are registered in Merton. So those would need to reduce by about 2,500 a year every year in order to meet that carbon neutral target. Those are two examples. There are others like thinking about, for example, or eat less meat, then that makes a big contribution. Yeah. So if you think about how.
Cows don't produce that much methane gas for the environment.
Yeah, but it's
Because I don't want to check, it's like a meat.
There's a problem up there. They're the biggest pollutants in.
Can you look at to do pretty
Then I finish your food.
Then you.
I'll move on quickly to how you could potentially get involved if you wish. So I always say at this point that the individual choices that people make really honestly do make the biggest difference. Merton Council, from the evidence we've got at the moment, are directly responsible for about 2.5% of the emissions. So 97.5% of emissions are as a result of choices that individual people and businesses and services make in the borough. So as I said, things like choosing sustainable cycling instead of using a car, converting your car to an electric vehicle. Those things really do make a big difference. So buying local, reducing packaging, that sort of thing. If you want more information about that, Sustainable Merton, the charity Sustainable Merton have a very good checklist on their website. The second thing you can think about is if you are trying to get a group together to do something, a project which thinks about reducing climate emissions, I'd be very interested to hear about it, so please contact me. We'll see what we can do to help if that's what you wish. Otherwise, I'm just interested to hear what you're doing. And the third thing is that we are kicking off a work programme to try and pull together an action plan. We've got a few ways that you can contribute to that if you want. So we are preparing an online survey, which we're going to use as our consultation. So that will be out in a few weeks. It'll be, if you Google Merton and climate change, it will come up in a few weeks' time. And you'll have an opportunity there to explain in detail what you would like to see in that. And there's also some good tick boxes so that we can gauge how people feel about climate change. As I said, there's the working group that Councillor Byers chairs. We can, if you have a sort of good amount of knowledge or want to get in touch with the members of the working group, I run the secretariat for that group, so please feel free to get in touch with me. And if you have some details to discuss that you feel is more than writing a few lines in a consultation document, then please feel free to get in touch with me again, and I'll be happy to talk to you in more detail. I've got a plug for Solar Together, which I'll say at the end, but any questions so far?
It's open for, yes, your
Yeah, I
turn.
apologise for interrupting.
No problem.
Can you just give that website again as well? Sorry.
You'll find this, if you look at the statistics, most of the pollution comes from aircraft. What is the council's policy on the third runway at Heathrow?
Yes, so we have written to the Chief Executive of Heathrow, expressing severe concerns about their consultation, about the new flight paths, and about the air pollution that could bring. As a council, we're equidistant between Heathrow and Gatwick. So we're not part of the 4 or 5 councils that are taking legal action using council taxpayers' money to judicially challenge the Heathrow expansion. There's 2 items here: the expansion and new flight paths. Yeah. So as a council, we've written 2 very, very strong letters, and that consultation is very critical of Heathrow's plans. And Chris will have those when he sends out all the minutes.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
If you listen to Forest Airport in Thames, is it alright?
Boris. All right, then.
Right. You can ask the question. So what I'm doing for me to get a new car, double glazing, solar panels on the roof.
Solar panels didn't answer.
So that is the reason for the action plan. So we're working on it.
We're not going to do anything, this is going to moan and say, this is what we can do. Before an officer.
I mean, that's right. I desperately would like to change my petrol car or something that's better. But the sort of car I like, it's one out of my budget. So I had to stick with petrol. So I don't have a choice. There's nobody saying to me, oh, here's a subsidy towards an efficient car.
So there are still, the Department of Transport still have grants for electric vehicles and also electric vehicle charge points. So if you go onto the Department of Transport's website, you might get
Okay, thank you. As you may have noticed, my main concern for the area is the fact they're intending to remove acute care, all the emergency stuff from Epsom and St Helier, and put it on, possibly later, put it on one site. What the council might not be aware of is that on that one acute site, if they get away with this plan, the only way to get in there will be by ambulance. You will not be allowed to walk in there. You will not be allowed to bike in there. You will not be allowed to get somebody else to drive you there. You'd have to go by ambulance. Not only that, anyone who gets sick in Epsom Hospital or St Helier Hospital and their condition deteriorates and they felt that they need acute intensive care, an ambulance will have to take them from Epsom or St Helier to this single acute facility. And after 3 to 5 days, any patient that's in there, and I've had this 3 or 5 days in intensive care, you will be either sent home or you will be transferred again by ambulance from this single unit back to the hospital you came from. And if after 3 or 5 days you've been sent back to a general hospital and your condition deteriorates again, another ambulance journey. This is about 10 times the number of ambulance journeys we're having now. Now, my concern is we haven't got enough ambulances, but from the point of view of pollution, how many extra journeys is this scheme going to introduce and pollute the local and national, carbon emissions? It's something that your group needs to take up with the Trust and with the CCGs, because this is their plan, and it's going to vastly increase the amount of traffic, ambulance traffic in the area.
You're going to take it up?
So I can't directly answer your question.
Did you know of this part of the plan? The fact that your only way into this acute centre will be by ambulance and people will be ferried backwards and forwards as their condition worsens and improves.
Could you look into it? Can you actually look into this?
Into your task group reports.
That ambulance is...
Ambulance journeys.
quantum of ambulances moving around. I mean, well, first of all, whether that's actually the case, and if it is, I mean, the impact it is having on
The other minor point to Katie is that all those movements would be across the border in Sutton, and therefore wouldn't be in our action plan to reduce Merton's emissions because they're in Sutton.
It depends where the patients are going to and from.
Yeah, so we're moving from Melbourne to...
Well, no, they're not telling us where they're moving it from. This is another secret. No knowledge of where they're, if they're going to put a single acute unit. It won't go anywhere till 2026, but where they put it, we don't yet know. But you will have patients here who at the moment would use St Helier, and they will be needed to be transported by ambulance to this new unit and out of it again, and to Epsom and to St Helier. And to say it won't affect us in Merton is
No, it doesn't affect us.
deal.
It's just that we can't fix that problem.
You can fix that problem. You can object to the plan for the reorganisation of the local hospital that people in this area live in. So you can object to that on pollution grounds.
So may I say what I have done so far?
Okay.
I've started to engage with the, I'm going to get the title wrong, but there's a group that's looking at the estates relating to public health. So my role in that is to try and advise the group on things like energy efficiency in buildings and reducing emissions relating to transport. So what I'm hoping is that we can have a positive engagement on that. So I'm not sure whether that will include the hospital.
Increased journeys, it certainly should.
So with the greatest of respect, the evidence that I've looked at so far on transportation is that the vast majority of the impact of greenhouse gas emissions in the borough is due to petrol and diesel cars. Even things like buses and heavy goods vehicles are small compared to, I'm not saying they're not significant, they're small compared to petrol and diesel cars. I need to focus my attention on the biggest impacts. So I'm not saying that it's not important, but in terms of where my attention is going to be, it will be in to try and reduce the biggest impacts first, because I only have a limited amount of time.
But we're not talking about reducing impacts, we're talking about their plan to increase impacts, and you should be resisting an increase, surely.
Yeah.
Well, could you undertake to look into the question when you have the time to actually look into the issue of these ambulances?
I'll take it up. Just to confirm with Chris that it's all minuted. Yeah, I will take it up.
Yeah. Okay, we've got Brenda and then
Katie, thanks for what you've told us so far. But I haven't heard anything about idling. And I know that's something we discussed in the council. I travel by bus a lot. And I noticed that that's happening with public transport. But what are we doing with vehicles, or what's the intention?
So there's a very strong link between air pollution emissions caused by vehicles and climate emissions, but they're not the same. So there's a separate team who have an air quality action plan that's in train. What we're looking to do with the climate strategy is make sure that the actions that we take are good for both of those things. So we haven't created the action plan yet, but what we're expecting is that, for example, a reduction in the use of petrol and diesel cars will no doubt improve air quality as well as climate change.
Okay.
I don't think I quite answer what I want, because I know that in some areas research or assessment have been done, like nearer to central London, on buses and vehicles like those, to check about hydrogen, because the more traffic and all the exhaust lowered and everything else, is the more we pollute.
Yeah.
So that affects climate, but it also affects schools and all of us really. And that's what I'm trying to ask. Is there going to be a dry up scheme?
So that's what I was trying to say is that we recognise that there's a link, and as part of the climate action process, we're looking to try and get as many synergies with the air quality action plan as possible. I can't give you any details yet because we haven't.
That's fine, as long as we plan it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of points that
Sorry,
I
I was first, I did.
Go on.
He first?
Is it the brief? Is it the brief question?
No, I see, you're the chairman.
Let him have a good anyway. Go on.
A couple of points. The lady said about the ambulance journeys, he said 2026, possibly. By that time, London Ambulance Service will probably have electric ambulances. So, I'm not blowing out, but that will reduce. Last year I wanted to buy a new car and I couldn't find an electric car that would do 200 miles without stopping and waiting for a long time to charge.
Tesla.
So, yeah. So I bought a car that is very, very quick, very, very powerful, but at 70, 80 mile an hour, it's returning 65 miles to the gallon on diesel, right? And you go in comfort, you reduce over my petrol car the price of the fuel by 70-odd%, and it goes on to idle. As soon as you touch the brake, it switches off and it switches on. It picks up so quickly as you let the brake off that you don't have a lag, right? So if you live in London, you shouldn't be driving a car around London. If you want to travel out of London, which a lot of us do because of our age, you can't beat a diesel vehicle at the moment. But you are seen as the villain by having it. And this client, the car is made, sold from Germany, but it's made in South Africa, right? In Poland, there are now 5 massive factories being built to produce millions and millions of batteries for these cars. And the pollution that will come out of the Eastern Bloc will be unbelievable, right? So England is a lot cleaner now than it was when I was a kid. You don't hear of anyone dying today with smog and coughing up blood. It's only occasionally, a majority of them are smokers or Eastern Europeans anyway. So I think that you and London Borough of Merton are picking on motorists, whereas you should be looking elsewhere to reduce it. I thought we had a Green Deal, but that got knocked on the head.
So if you're talking about a carbon neutral borough, the evidence that we've been looking at from studies done by the Greater London Authority and studies done jointly by government and for example, the Tyndall Centre in Manchester, who's really leading the way on that sort of local solution. They say that in order to become carbon neutral, you really have to get rid of pretty much all petrol and diesel vehicles, and at the same time get rid of pretty much all gas use, and at the same time do all of the other things that I mentioned. So at the moment, our view is that focusing on only one section won't be enough to reach our target.
And we've got to eat food from Mitcham Common. We've got to be producing food locally.
I've got to check it.
Right.
You can bring me out.
Carbon neutral, there's a lot of fiddling going on, isn't there? Like, you can buy or you can sell your carbon extras to where somebody has not got any. And I think it was with the Sussexes going on holiday by aeroplane, and because it's carbon neutral, because someone else wasn't using their allocation. So we've got to be careful we're not going to do that sort of manoeuvre. The other thing is, people are polluting. It seems that the council are trying to get more people living in the council, especially when they sort of allow these houses to be divided up into a number of different dwellings. So you're going to get more people exhaling carbon dioxide. You said about the riding bicycles, well that's going to cause more, you can use more energy, and you're going to exhale more carbon dioxide.
There you go.
It is catchment.
So should we talk
I'm going to talk about pollution.
Go on.
So, shall I respond?
Most seriously,
I want to respond to them all.
well, it's connected.
Why does our council let diesel buses come through from central London, where they're putting electric buses in, and they get rid of all the old buses out to us?
Yeah.
Central London have got all electric buses, and all their old electric buses, they send them out to diesel buses, send them out to us, and we have them running around our streets.
So,
Damaging our roads.
the first thing you mentioned was about carbon offsetting, which is the practice of do less carbon emissions in one area to compensate for another.
You can buy that.
Sorry?
So you can buy your haircut.
So the intention for the plan is to reduce emissions as much as possible. There may be emissions that it's either so expensive or so technically difficult to eradicate that we could potentially think about carbon offsetting. So one example could be increasing the number of trees, because when you grow a tree, it's a carbon store. Another example could be investments in renewable energy, which is produced somewhere else, but we pay for. So that's another example. But we're not intending to. That's not the strategy. We're not intending to do that as much as possible, so that we don't have to reduce emissions in our impact credit. So that's the first thing. You talked about breathing out carbon dioxide. So my understanding is that the main issue is when you take the carbon stored under the ground from fossil fuels and pull it out and burn it, you get a net increase in carbon dioxide emissions. So, and when people breathe out, that is increasing carbon dioxide emissions. But what would cause the net increase is an increase in population. Do you understand what I mean? So I don't think we're comparing like for like when we're talking about breathing
It might
out.
not be the same, but it's sort of partly the problem. We, human beings, exhale carbon dioxide. And the more our people in the world, there'll be more carbon dioxide.
Yes, so that is right. But I doubt we'll be forming policies about population control. So we really need to be thinking about how we can reduce the emissions that we cause as people.
What is the same
Start buying carbon.
So hang on. Can I answer your question that you asked about the buses? My understanding is that TfL have a programme to buses. I'm more than happy to try and speed that up in Merton. I don't know yet whether I'll be successful, but I support the idea of converting as much petrol and diesel as possible, as quickly as possible.
Why couldn't we ban buses in Merton?
Beg your pardon?
Why couldn't we ban diesel buses in Merton?
Well,
be radical. Go for it.
we would be happy to take ideas as part of the action plan process. I mean, that's what it's all about. I would suggest that banning buses might increase the number of cars though, so we might be shooting ourselves in the foot on that one.
So there was one other question, and maybe must move on because we're going to have to get over here at night.
Certainly, additional trees can be very beneficial, but if you plant additional trees, you have to have a proper maintenance program to make sure they become established. There's no use sticking them in and letting them die, and you can't rely on local people that are running around with endless buckets of water if the trees are not exactly outside their front doors. And we have seen trees planted by the borough which have been allowed to die ridiculously because the maintenance programme doesn't take account of variations in the amount of rainfall. You can get a very hot dry summer or a very cool wet one. And it does seem that officers don't plan for this sort of eventuality.
So I certainly agree with the fact that in order to get a good carbon benefit, your tree must grow into maturity. We're really interested in how we can improve our tree cover and be able to properly maintain the trees. So again, we really welcome ideas on that.
Instead of building
And
houses,
there's a lot about pickup trees and so on.
not building houses and plant forests.
Thank you, Chair. I find this whole thing very frustrating. This country does not generate a significant amount of carbon dioxide at ground level, other than that which is generated by the aircraft coming in and out, the ships coming in and out, the goods which are made in serious polluting countries like China, like India. If we wanted to actually make a difference in this world, we shouldn't be focusing on ripping out people's central heating systems, contributor at the minuscule scale Britain contributes. What we should be doing is not buying from giant China, India. We should not be having parts ferried backwards and forwards from Europe to the UK and back and forth to build cars. We should stop all that. We should stop supermarkets. We should restore the high street because everybody needs a car just to get their shopping. It's all very well you saying do away with petrol and diesel cars. That's just another inconvenience for people, making it impossible. How many bags can you carry on a bus?
You're raising a number of issues there, quite complex questions.
Well, we should be attacking the big issue, which is importation, air travel.
You want
diesel buses?
Casey, do you want to say anything?
So,
What you're proposing will make damn all difference to the world.
so I haven't proposed anything
You've been
because the
talking
action plan
about
hasn't
taking
been.
away petrol and diesel cars.
Okay,
So we haven't made any proposals yet because we haven't drafted an action plan. So again, we welcome your ideas. The UK nationally produces 450 million tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions a year, and Merton produces roughly between 500,000 and 1 million. It's a very rough estimate. So I understand your point about the scale and in relation to the global impact, the impacts across the globe. It might seem like it pales into insignificance when you start talking about Merton, but I think we also have to recognise that we have a personal responsibility to do our bit, and it's all very well saying, well, these people need to act and these people need to act, so we don't need to act. I feel like, personally, that's abdicating our own responsibilities.
Thank you so much, Casey. I think
Thank
we
you.
We should give the link to that survey that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, it's not out quite yet, But
Where will it be?
oh, sorry, I have one plug for the Solar Together scheme as well.
Yes.
Don't mind
Which
very
one
much.
was that before we did it on?
Sorry. The survey I mentioned isn't out yet, but if you Google Merton and climate emergency, it will come up in a few weeks. I just wanted to say, if anybody is interested in putting solar panels on your roofs, the Mayor of London is running a scheme currently where you can register and you'll go through some questions and it will tell you roughly how much your solar panels might be. But the Mayor of London is trying to use collective bargaining to drive down the price. So on the 21st of October, the registrations will close and they'll choose a preferred bidder. Once that happens, if you have registered, they'll let you know roughly how much it's going to cost. There's no obligation up to that point, but if you want to proceed after that, you can go and get your solar panels. Last year, with the equivalent solar panels, they achieved about a 35% decrease in the price of the solar panels and the installation. So this scheme has been running for 3 years now. So if you're interested, please feel free to register without obligation.
Is that green? Is that green deal, darling, that we knew
We're
about?
going to have to wind up now because time is pressing. I need to get on to the next agenda. If there are any questions that you want to raise, you can direct it. Okay, we're going to call on Stephen now. You can give us Councillor update.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Every question you first.
Yes. This is the third, so I've addressed the Wimbledon Community Forum at the Wimbledon Library at the art space there, and then I addressed Collins Wood at the library there. This is the third in the series of autumn community fora. And what I wanted to do is try and give a sense of the local authority, what it's trying to achieve, with some of the difficulties, not just this local authority, but all local authorities are facing throughout these very, very difficult times. But I wanted to start with, as I did in the others, an anonymised case study, just to reflect the universality of an issue by homing in on an individual case, which is of a person that we shall call Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters was born in 1923 and he's 96 years old. He lives in Merton and he lives alone in his 2-bedroom maisonette. Mr. Peters is never married, has no children. He has a nephew who lives in the Midlands. He's an independent man, able to warm up his meals. His next door neighbour is very supportive and they look out for each other. Sadly, Mr. Peters recently had a fall at home. He was on the floor for a few hours. He was found by his neighbour who called for an ambulance. Mr. Peters has high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol. Now, during his stay in hospital, he was also diagnosed with having Alzheimer's disease. Upon discharge from the hospital, a team from Merton Council visited Mr. Peters to undertake a programme of what we call re-ablement and an assessment of need. They asked what would Mr. Peters like to achieve, what things interested him, what hobbies and interests did he have, and how could they support him to regain his confidence and his skills. Mr. Peters said he felt low due to his Alzheimer's diagnosis. So, along with him and with the Ablement team, they devised a plan and set some goals for him to achieve. Mr. Peters would receive 4 calls each day. Morning for support with personal care, afternoon for support with preparing lunch, tea time again for support with domestic tasks, medication, a light meal, and then in the evening, support with preparing for bed. Occupational therapist from Merton Council visited. Equipment was installed at home to support him. He had his own personal care plan. He received a raised toilet seat and a frame, a raised chair and bath board to support with using the bath to wash. Reablement support workers also supported and provided supervision with personal care washing, dressing and undressing. The neighbours said they would currently do the shopping for Mr. Peters. There was also a referral for a mascot alarm and key fob and key safe in case he had a number 4. Mr. Peters said he felt socially isolated, so support workers have made referrals to Age UK Merton down the road for social support, ongoing shopping and cleaning support. Reablement support workers are now volunteer work and go walking with him in his local area to build his confidence and his strength. Mr. Peters now says he's happy, he's regaining his confidence and his independence, which is what he wanted. Now, there are a number of other people like Mr. Peters, and 45% of our controllable income goes on looking after people like Mr. Peters. It is a statutory service, and it is a service that all local authorities have to deliver. And that's one of the tough issues that all local authorities are currently facing. Reduced resources, increasing demand. And we as a council made a decision back in 2011, when we were elected after 2010, that we would have what we call our July principles. And those are, wherever possible, to look after vulnerable people, to look after children that we look after, to look after the homeless, to look after those in temporary accommodation, and to look after people like Mr. Peters. So when you see the council's budgets since 2011, that we were in control of, there are less cuts to those services for vulnerable people, and more cuts to other services like corporate and environment and regeneration. But in adult social care, in education, in communities, safety, there are still cuts, but those cuts are less than they would be had we not had that attention to detail and those July principles that was voted on by the council. Also, what we've done as a council, one of the few councils to invest £1 million in the voluntary sector. That's in where we are now, by funding, supporting Merton Volunteer Service Council and their community projects, Wimbledon Guild, Merton and Morden Guild, Age UK Merton, and also impressing upon developers so that when we give them planning permission for development, we get money from them for good causes, so that we plough back. So, one of our biggest developments has been one of the biggest stories in football in this country, of a team called Wimbledon, kicked out of Wimbledon by the Football Association, up to Milton Keynes. What did that club do? They reformed and they're now back in the league as AFC Wimbledon. And what did the council do for them? And what are we going to do for the cricket in the pavilion? It's exactly the same as what we did for AFC Wimbledon. Vouchsafe the future of AFC Wimbledon and the future of Mitcham cricket and the pavilion. We are going to do exactly the same because we have the experience. And you do that through the planning process. It's what's called planning game. And so we have a football club now building its stadium, 9,000-seater to begin with, going up to 20,000, with a whole regeneration of that whole area.
Houses too, yeah.
Houses too. Objected to, stored, called in by Boris Johnson. It cost that club £600,000. The delay that he caused, £600,000 to that club, and how much they would love to keep that going. We're also investing in our high streets that are suffering. We have the programme of rediscovering Mitcham town centre, where we ploughed in 7 million, and we've also got schemes for high streets in Haynes Road, Shopping Parade, in Collinswood, high streets as well. And with our attention to vulnerable people, the elderly, and anyone who is sick or ill, we discussed the issue of St Henry Hospital and this council's support for that hospital, and that will continue. And as I said, we'll have that meeting and we'll work increasingly together. Also very proud of our libraries. 500 libraries have closed since 2010. 500 libraries. In this borough, not one library has closed. In fact, we've built a brand new library in Collinswood. I want to pay a tribute, and I was pulled up in the Wimbledon Community Forum for not saying this, and I should have said it then. I normally say a big thank you to our volunteers who work in our libraries, and without whom our libraries would be struggling. And volunteers are very important to that scheme. Libraries brings me nicely onto schools. This council expanded 23 primary schools since 2010. Not with a porter cabin and extra classes for the head teacher, with well-designed additions to those schools. We're very lucky, a lot of our primary schools are in park settings. Dundonald was one. In the face of opposition from residents, we did what was right by the head teacher and the parents and the school kids. We did what was right, and we will continue to do that. 23 schools, creating 4,500 extra primary school places. Mr. Peters, 96 down to children at the age of 3 or 4. We will look after those who need support from the council. Our schools are now good or outstanding, the vast majority of them, good or outstanding. Choice is very important in schools. I do believe in the state school system. We are primarily nearly a local authority, but we do have some new entrants as a result of government legislation, both from the previous administration, Labour administration under Tony Blair, and the current Conservative administration of academies. And we have a brand new secondary school about to kick off in September 2020 in South Wimbledon. That is already fully subscribed as a school in a small way in Camberley Ward at the former Adult Education Centre. And adult education goes from strength to strength. At a time when people said we were closing adult education. We were not closing adult education. We were saving adult education because the Department for Skills was reducing the investment in adult education. Had we stayed where we were, we would have cut courses mid-term. And our adult education is now thriving under the auspices of Merton College up the hill as you go down to Epsom Road. Ursuline, Harris, Rutledge, all outstanding schools. And when we have failing schools, we step in very quickly to try and resolve the situation.
And
so it's
supporting centres.
Yeah, day centres, everyday centre is remained, children's centres, day centres, all still thriving. A lot of local authorities have had to close them. St Claudius just recently, Katie's talked about climate change. Friends of the Earth, a very respectable, prestigious, influential organisation, said that the London Borough of Merton is up there, number 2, number 3, joint second, I think, in terms of tackling climate change. Joint second. And we're very proud of that. And long may that continue. I know Katie has a job of work to do. We'll take all the ideas that people have said, but you cannot get more independent evaluation from an organisation steeped in improving this earth. That's climate change. And in terms of looking after people, what has Brexit done? Whether you're to leave or against leave, whether you're remain or leave, there are 24,000 EU citizens living in this borough.
Legal, you say?
Living. 24,000.
I've got 14 next door to me
So this
in a 2-bedroom house.
So this local authority has a population of 200,000 and 24,000 are EU citizens. EU citizens. And we want to make sure that if they want to apply for EU settled status, that they can. So we've invested in a dedicated officer working at the Citizens Advice Bureau to process applications, and they can also go to the Morton Registry Office with scanning processing. And so we set up a Brexit task group, and we've set up a cabinet member with responsibility for Brexit implications and a director with responsibility for Brexit implications. And we've invested some money in addressing the issue of a crisis in accessing social workers. If Brexit goes through, especially without a deal, there will be an issue in terms of social workers. If Brexit goes through without a deal, and I hope it won't go through at all, I'm a Remainer. This is a Remain council. The voting percentages in this borough, 63% in Mitcham and Morton voted to remain, 73% in Wimbledon voted to remain. So London is a Remain area, but we are, as a local authority, realistic, and we've put in place systems to look after, protect and process people's EU settled status claims. So we want to help people rather than not being in a position to help them. So we've allocated monies to a dedicated service at the Citizen Advice Bureau, which is a good, trusted service. Those are some of the issues that I wanted to raise, and please do not forget about Mr. Peters. It's a national crisis in the country. I'm not saying that we are the only local authority that looks after people, but it's an individual case to reflect the universality of what is happening throughout the whole country in terms of social care. And finally, from me, we want to bridge the gap between the affluent west of the borough, where someone can live 13 years longer in the village, Wimbledon village, than someone in Mitcham. And we need to bridge that gap. So where we do have any spare resources, we cloak all our policies wherever possible under the banner of bridging the gap. We want to be business-like. We are not Northampton. We will not go bust. We have reserves. We have monies for a rainy day. And as you all know, there is a collapsed bridge in my ward, in Ravensbury, and we are self-insured, and the money is there whether to repair it or to renew it, whichever decision we come to. That's because we are a business-like local authority. And finally, we're a very family-friendly area, and a recent survey said that the London Borough of Merton is one of the most family-friendly boroughs for families to live in this area. So, bridging the gap, family-friendly and business-like is something. But these are tough times. I'm not saying we get everything right, as we've discussed, and the refuse collection is still a long way to go. But essentially, we still stand to be the fourth safest borough in London. We are one of the few boroughs, and I'm not taking credit for this, but this is why it's a area, with two commons, Wimbledon Common, Mitcham Common, and when you fly over the borough, if ever you've flown in the helicopter over the borough, I haven't, the tree canopy is 22%. It's 22%. The average for a London borough is 10%. So we want the greenest, not the greenest. Richmond is probably more than us, but we are one of the greenest. And we pride ourselves on our trees. And I take your point, madam, about planting trees and looking after them and not just letting them with on the Rhine. But we do do all we can to remain a green borough. Thank you, and happy to take more questions.
If we will be able to take more questions, if you're brief with your questions, because we've got to be able to get at 9. I have 10 minutes for questions. I'll start over there.
Thank you. The cricket, you said you're going to make sure you save the cricket. Does that include saving the actual cricket pavilion, not demolishing? Because Plough Lane, obviously, everything's been completely demolished and been built from scratch. And if you're making a comparison, the implication is that you're going to destroy everything that's there and start from scratch.
No, it's not for us to destroy
gonna...
anything. No, it's not for us to destroy it. It's what the cricket board wants, what Peter wants, what the cricket, what you want. So, you know, we're in a powerful position to say it's already an asset of community value. That's important. The council has given it that nomination, following pressure from the group. We want to thank them. We need that pressure ourselves. And the planning game that I was talking about is whoever turns up, whether it's the current owners of the Burn Bullock, who have access to the freehold around there. If they ask for something or they want to do something, we will say, we can say, and I think it's possible to say, you cannot get that, and we will not give you that unless you vouchsafe and secure the future of Mitcham Cricket Club, and that's what we will do. That's what we will be committed to doing. So we're in a strong position, but we can't do anything until they turn up with their planning application, whatever that is. But we can say we can do, and that's what we did with the dog track. We first nominated it for sporting intensification. So when there was an independent inquiry, my officer said, Wimbledon dog track is down for sporting intensification. That meant it had to be a sports facility there. That was intensified on top of a dog track whose capacity was 6,000 but was drawing 2,000. Now, sporting intensification we didn't say it's sporting intensification for AFC Wimbledon. No, you can't do that. You can't vet it, you can't dictate. Sporting intensification. And the rugby could have turned up, the hockey could have turned up, the dog racing fraternity could have turned up. They didn't. Who turned up? AFC Wimbledon was the only planning application. Anyone can put a planning application on any piece of land, whether they own it or not. A lot of people out there think that the council is in cahoots with developers. We do not decide who asks for what. The government says you will look at that planning application put in by whoever. And there's only one planning application for AFC Wimbledon, and Mr. Pascal Taggart, the guy who was from Dublin, came and gave a presentation of how he would put in place a dog track. He didn't put in an application. That was the only application. And we said to the developer, you want your flats? You'll only get your flats if we get a football stadium there as well. And so, that experience that we have with AFC Wimbledon, we will use for Mitcham Cricket Club, because it's the oldest in the world, and it would be wrong of us not to do everything in our power, and we will, to make sure you are there for another 300 years. Yes.
With our friend Mr. Peters, you say that it was assisted by my council to have a raised chair for washing purposes, a raised toilet seat and a frame for the toilet. One of the things which I pointed out in an email to all councillors in respect to the High Path planning application, and I think it may also apply to some of the other planning applications when it comes to detailed design, is that their architects are not putting sufficient space within combined bath and WC units to actually accommodate these disabled adaptations. Can I have your assurance that planning officers are aware of this and are strong on what are the minimum space standards, taking into account the additional size and space that these raised chairs, because they have splayed legs, they take up a lot more space and toilet frames have. And that is part of the planning application in all publicly funded buildings at least, and preferably in all private ones as well.
Yeah, I'll look at that. I'm not sure of the detail, but I'll look at that for you.
You have a question at the back, yes?
I did have a question earlier. You were talking about the solar panels, and I hear that you said there's several steps in the process to get to a price. Before we go through those steps, and I am sort of interested, can you give us a ballpark figure for a roof installation of solar panels?
So this is an absolute ballpark because it depends on your situation.
Of course.
But for an average semi with a south-facing roof, you're talking about an investment of roughly £3,000 to £4,000. The money you save on energy bills, and you can also sell your excess electricity back into the grid when it's appropriate. You get roughly, about a 10-year payback. So remember back in the day when you had the feed-in tariff and you got money from the government, that's no longer there, but the prices of solar panels have reduced by about 90% over the last decade or so. So,
about 4,000.
So it's not dissimilar to the sorts of returns you get from the
Okay, one other question.
First of all, I'd like to thank the council for the excellent police care service, which my husband has benefited. And secondly, to express concern about the time on which the old Quickfix site has been left vacant by private developers, whereas it could and should have been developed long ago.
Yes, no, that's not good. So we will lobby the government to force developers, once they get planning permission, to get on with it. At the moment, 3 years, they have to do something. But then it lapses and they start all over again. But you are quite right. I'd like that 3 years reduced, or some kind of system whereby you can't get one planning permission and then the same organisation apply for another planning permission, then decide which one they want to go for. But that's for the government to do. But yes, it is concerned that it's still there. It's an eyesore.
Could offer a lot of housing.
We'll get one other and then we must.
There's a comment, I think.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, because I don't know anything about this, but where somebody receives a care package in their home, do they have to pay anything? If they're not on benefits or anything, do they have to pay for that?
Yes. So it depends. There's some figure of £23,000. So it can be needs tested, but they don't have to pay immediately. There can be a charge on their, if they own their house. There can be a charge on their house.
Going into a care home?
Yes.
Or you pay for the care house?
Yes,
Is that how it works?
Yes, it's up to you.
So it's not free? Somebody comes in and sorts out the day, you have to pay?
Yeah, but the vast majority, I'd have to look this up for you, but the vast majority of people don't have more than 23,000.
Yeah, but is there scope for increasing that?
The government, there's a green paper coming out on social care, and that will talk about making care free like in Scotland.
Okay, yes, one.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment, point of order thing. Councillor Alambritis, you mentioned that the borough benefits from 2 commons.
Yeah.
You're incorrect, I'm afraid. It benefits from more than that, because I spent a lot of my youth on Cannon Hill Common, which is in the borough. And I just thought we should.
That's where I live. Point taken. It could be 2 conservative commons.
Very quick one,
Yeah, what we going on?
Just want to come back on the cricket club. We've been, as you know, the forum's been going on for 10 years. We've been trying to get a meeting with Martin Weldon to discuss the
Martin.
We haven't had any response back from him yet. Can you possibly avoid this here?
Yes, of course. We've had meetings ourselves.
Yes, I know.
Yes. Maybe you want to get down to the details. Yeah, I'll talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, right. Now, I must bring the meeting to an end. First of all, we thank Stephen for his and Chris wants to make 2 points.
Just a few notices. There's a bag of these things that look a bit weird at the end there. Apparently, according to the police, there's been a spate of registration plate thefts in the borough. These are tamper-proof screws, so you can grab what's left before what you know, so before it gets empty. And you can fit those to your car and then they don't. They're quite good. There's a few flyers over there. As part of the Cannons project, there's a reminiscence project. So for those of you who lived in Mitcham a long period of time, which I think in this room is probably 1 or 2 people, you can be a star on TV and screen. They're going to make a film of it, and your members of Mitcham and Days Gone Past will be captured. So that's a really good project. I don't know. Good question to ask. And then there's a few paper copies over there, but you can also do this online. It's our annual safety alert survey, looking at food safety issues across the borough. We've had something like 600 responses so far, so please get involved, and as I say, closes next Friday.
Thank you very much for your attendance. And have a vibrant meeting. I look forward to the next meeting. This is